Have you ever seen someone with a body part so large it doesn't look human? In today's video, we are looking at 12 humans born with unusually large body parts. From conditions so rare most doctors never encounter them in an entire career, to biological differences so extreme they left specialists completely without answers. These are not myths, not edits, not illusions. These are real people with real stories, and every single one of them will leave you completely speechless. Evan Hill. Growing up in Christchurch, New Zealand, Evan was born with extremely large front teeth that made it impossible for him to properly close his mouth and speak normally. Kids at school noticed immediately and gave him a cruel nickname, Rabbit Kid. You already know how school must have felt after that. Doctors explained that this wasn't just about having unusually large teeth. His jaw had developed at an abnormal angle, leaving a large gap between his upper and lower teeth. The good news was that it could be corrected. The bad news? It would cost over $12,000. His family simply couldn't afford it. Then something incredible happened. Evan's story was featured on television. People started donating. Before long, enough money had been raised to give Evan the treatment his family had never been able to afford. The treatment wasn't overnight. There were braces, dental work, years of appointments and adjustments. Little by little, his teeth moved into place. His jaw slowly began to function the way it was supposed to. Evan's story proves that one act of kindness at the right moment can pull someone out of the darkest place they have ever been and change the entire direction of their life. Robert Wadlow. Robert was born in Alton, Illinois, in 1918 to parents of completely average height. And when he was born, there was nothing unusual about his size. He weighed just over 8 pounds, about the same as an average newborn. But within his first few years, something began happening that frightened every member of his family. Robert started growing at an unbelievable rate. By the time he was 5 years old, he already stood 5 feet 4 inches tall. At 8, he was taller than his own father. He had grown so large that he could actually carry his father upstairs. Doctors eventually found the cause. Robert had a condition called pituitary gland hypertrophy, causing his body to produce far too much growth hormone. There was no treatment to stop it. The growth continued year after year. By the time Robert turned 17, he had reached 8.5 feet, making him the tallest teenager ever recorded. Eventually, he reached an astonishing 8 feet 11.1 inches, a record that still stands today. Keeping a body that size alive took an unbelievable amount of energy. As a teenager, Robert needed around 8,000 calories every day just to keep up with what his own body demanded. His hands measured nearly 13 inches long. His shoes were an incredible US size 37 AA, specially made because nothing sold in stores even came close. Despite his ordeal, everyone who met Robert said he had the most gentle and heartwarming smile ever. So, they nicknamed him the Gentle Giant. Then came the tragedy. Because Robert had lost much of the feeling in his legs and feet, the leg braces he wore rubbed against his ankle day after day. He barely felt it. Eventually, a small blister formed. Most people would have noticed. Robert couldn't. The wound became infected. The infection spread quietly through his body. By the time doctors realized how serious it had become, there was nothing they could do. On July 15, 1940, Robert Wadlow died. He was just 22 years old. His coffin weighed around 1,000 pounds, requiring 18 pallbearers to carry it as thousands lined the streets to say goodbye. Despite all the pain he endured, people didn't remember him for his size. They remembered him for his kindness. Cadia Page. Cadia lived with 2 rare conditions called lipedema and lymphedema, diseases that caused abnormal fat buildup and severe swelling in her legs. Unlike ordinary weight gain, this wasn't something she could run off, diet away, or fix with a gym membership, but people didn't know that. They looked at her once and decided they already knew her story. They called her Glutton. Some believe she was just too lazy to exercise and get rid of those fats. The heartbreaking part? Even some doctors got it wrong. One doctor even looked at her and said, "What have you been doing wrong? Confess. What do you eat?" He believed she was the cause of her problems. Meanwhile, every single day became more difficult. Her legs became so heavy, they changed the way she moved. They eventually grew to around 50 inches wide, reaching a point where, in her own words, she could barely do much at all. Kadia's story reached a global audience after she appeared in the documentary My Legs Won't Stop Growing. She opened up about the physical pain, the emotional struggles, and the medical challenges she faced every single day. Her honesty tore down the stigma around rare body conditions and corrected a painful misconception, the belief that lipedema was simply obesity. Today, people remember Kadia Page for far more than her condition. They remember her courage, her compassion, and the advocacy she carries to this day. Beijing. Beijing wanted to look completely different from everyone else, so she went in for surgery to enhance her breasts until she became one of the most recognizable women on the internet. Each one weighs more than 20 pounds. That's roughly 40 pounds hanging from the front of her body every hour of every single day. While some people appreciated her courage, others bullied her for it. Some called her the ugliest thing they had ever seen. Regardless of everything people threw at her, Beijing stepped even further into the spotlight. She began sharing her daily life online, posting videos, photographs, and modeling shoots for millions of followers. She accepted a lifetime of physical challenges to create the life and identity she wanted. Love it or not, Beijing wears her look with pride and humor. Her message is simple: be bold, be fearless, never let the world define your beauty. Define it yourself. Sidney de Carvalho Mesquita. Sidney's story sounds like something out of a horror movie. At age 9, he stood in front of a mirror as a little kid, pulled a funny face, and suddenly watched his own eyeballs slide out of their sockets. That was the first time Sidney realized his body could do something almost no other human being on Earth could. His eyes could protrude farther than almost anyone else's in the world, and that strange discovery eventually made him famous. Today, Sidney, better known as Tio Chico, can push his eyeballs an astonishing 18.2 millimeters out of their sockets, earning him a Guinness World Record. But here's the part almost nobody thinks about. Every single time Sidney performs, his vision changes. For around 20 to 30 seconds, he can't see normally. His eyes begin drying out almost immediately because they're no longer protected the way they should be. Afterward, he experiences a severe burning sensation, one that only eye drops can put out. Eye specialists have warned that pushing the eyes out repeatedly carries risks. One careless accident could cause serious damage to his eyes. Sidney knows this, and he has continued to remain very cautious. Someone else has since broken his record. In 2024, Williams Martin Sanchez Lopez pushed the mark to 19 millimeters. Even so, Sidney remains a true legend in the world of extraordinary human feats. Roberto Esquivel Cabrera. Meet Roberto Esquivel Cabrera, a 60-year-old man from Saltillo, Mexico, who became a global sensation for one reason. He carries the title of the largest male private part on Earth. Most people have never heard his name, but they have seen his face. His images and videos exploded across the internet and pulled in millions of eyes almost overnight. Roberto claims his private part measures an almost unbelievable 18.9 inches long, and he wants Guinness World Records to officially recognize him as having the longest in the world. His story first caught fire in 2015, when a video of him measuring himself spread across the internet like wildfire. But not everyone believes the number. Jonah Falcon, the man who currently holds the official record, has openly challenged Roberto's claim. He argues that Roberto's measurements don't meet the standards required for an official record. But having such an extreme size has come with serious consequences. Roberto says it has made walking uncomfortable. finding clothes that fit difficult, and even doing ordinary, everyday things much harder than they should be. His condition has affected his life so severely that he has been officially registered as disabled. His story leaves one lesson behind. Everything extreme demands a price, and Roberto has spent years paying his Mahogany Geeter. Meet Mahogany Geeter, a woman from Tennessee. She was born with a rare condition called lymphedema. This condition causes extra fluid to build up inside the body's tissues. From the day she was born, her left leg was affected. As the years passed, it kept growing larger and larger. Today, that single leg weighs about 100 pounds, or 45 kilograms. The difference between her two legs is so dramatic that almost everyone notices it the moment they see her. You can probably imagine what her childhood was like. Kids laughed at her. Others called her names. Even normal things became frustrating. Finding clothes that fit was a struggle. Walking around for long periods was tiring. Shopping was difficult because almost nothing was made for someone with a leg like hers. Most of the time, she wore long skirts or loose pants, hoping people wouldn't notice. But then something happened that completely changed her life. In 2017, Mahogany was working an ordinary shift at Walmart when a photographer happened to see her. He didn't see someone who needed to hide. He saw someone who stood out in the best possible way. That one unexpected moment led to a modeling career and gave her a chance to tell her story to the world. Today, Mahogany no longer hides her leg. She proudly shows it in photos, on social media, and through her modeling work. She uses her platform to teach people about lymphedema and to remind anyone who feels different that they do not have to be ashamed of who they are. What once brought her years of pain has now become the very reason she inspires millions of people. Mandy Sellers. The doctors told Mandy Sellers there was only one way to save her life. They had to cut off her leg. You won't actually believe Mandy's response. But first, how did she even end up in that disturbing situation? Mandy was born in England with an extremely rare overgrowth condition that caused her legs and feet to grow massively out of proportion to the rest of her body. As the years passed, her upper body stayed relatively small, but her lower body just kept growing. At one point, her legs alone weighed around 238 pounds, that she was carrying the weight of another grown adult everywhere she went. Doctors first suggested amputating Mandy's legs when she was only 7 years old, hoping to prevent even worse problems as she grew, but her mother refused. Once Mandy's legs were gone, there was no getting them back. She wanted her daughter to keep them for as long as it was safely possible. So Mandy kept fighting. She learned to live with her condition. She moved out on her own. She earned a university degree in psychology. She even drove a specially modified car, determined to prove she could build an independent life despite what her body kept putting her through. But then everything started falling apart. The weight of her legs placed enormous strain on her body. She suffered a dangerous blood clot. She had to learn how to walk again. Then came kidney failure, serious infections, one medical crisis after another. Every time she recovered, another battle was waiting. Then came the day she had feared for years. One of her legs became so badly infected that doctors gave her devastating news. If they didn't amputate it, she might not survive. This time, there was no choice. In 2010, Mandy said goodbye to her left leg above the knee. Everyone thought the nightmare was finally over. Then something happened that sounds almost impossible. The stump started growing again, month after month. The remaining tissue kept expanding until parts of it reached around 1 meter in circumference. The prosthetic leg she had hoped would help her walk could no longer support the weight. She agreed to lose a leg to stop the disease, only to watch her body begin the whole process again. It's hard to think of anything more cruel. For years, doctors struggled to understand exactly what was happening to her. Then, after decades of uncertainty, genetic testing finally revealed the answer. A rare mutation in a gene called PIK3CA was driving the abnormal growth. Doctors found some hope when they prescribed a trial drug targeting the mutated gene. Over time, this treatment helped reduce the weight of her legs by several stone, a 6-stone drop, and eased her mobility somewhat, even if she remained largely housebound. Most people would have been crushed by everything Mandy had been through. Mandy wasn't. She spoke publicly about her journey. She appeared in documentaries. She continued raising awareness for rare growth disorders so that other families might get answers sooner than she did. Her legs changed her life. They took away her mobility, but they never took away her determination. Sridhar Chilal. Sridhar Chilal's story started with one accident that changed the next 66 years of his life. Sridhar was 14 when he accidentally snapped one of his teacher's long fingernails. The teacher completely lost his temper and called Sridhar a destructive boy right in front of the whole class. Sridhar felt completely embarrassed. That day, he made himself a promise. He would never cut the fingernails on his left hand again. He would grow them longer than his teachers, and he would prove that something good could come out of one careless accident. He had absolutely no idea that one promise would quietly take over the next 66 years of his life. Years passed, and his fingernails just kept growing, curling around each other until they looked almost unreal. By the time they were finally measured, their combined length had reached an astonishing 29 feet, making them the longest fingernails ever recorded on a single hand. But as the nails grew longer, they also grew heavier. The weight pulled constantly on his fingers and hand, slowly damaging the nerves over the years. Little by little, he lost more and more use of his left hand until it became almost useless. Then came the everyday struggles. Getting dressed, working, and even bathing became difficult. Even sleeping turned into a challenge. Every night, he had to be careful how he lay down, because one wrong movement could snap a nail that had taken decades to grow. Year after year, people traveled from around the world just to see his extraordinary nails. He became a Guinness World Record holder and one of the most recognizable people ever to hold such an unusual title. But every record comes with a price. His fingers suffered permanent damage. The pain became constant. Finally, in 2018, after carrying those nails for 66 years, Sridhar made another decision. He let them go. They were carefully cut off and preserved at Ripley's, believe it or not, museum in New York, where millions of people can still see them today. Most people expected that moment to be emotional. For Sridhar, it was a relief. He was finally free. Subscriber pick. This image was sent to us by one of our subscribers, who claimed it came from a remote or isolated tribe. We cannot independently verify the origin of this photo or the story behind it. If authentic, the unusual head size could point to a rare medical or genetic condition. As always, we share these images for awareness and discussion, never to judge or misrepresent anyone. What can you say about this? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Mark Davidson Shildo. Mark was born in the Philippines with macrodactyly, an extremely rare condition that caused his hands to grow far beyond their normal size. And we're not talking about hands that were just a little bigger than average. At their largest, they grew to nearly 10 times the normal size. As Mark grew older, so did his hands. Simple things most of us never even think about became daily challenges. Holding ordinary objects, using everyday tools, finding things that actually fit. But, as difficult as that was, it still wasn't the hardest part. From a young age, Mark was cruelly bullied and mocked. But instead of hiding from the world, Mark refused to let his condition stop him from living. He built a career for himself, proving that his condition could not hold him back from earning a living. He didn't let his condition stop him from building a life. He eventually became a husband and a father. Today, Mark openly shares his journey online from his home in Manila. He's no longer letting strangers tell his story for him. He's telling it himself. Wesley Warren. Wesley Warren Jr. was born in 1963 and lived in Las Vegas. He became known around the world for living with scrotal elephantiasis, a severe form of scrotal lymphedema. This condition caused his scrotum to swell to an astonishing 132 pounds, about 60 kilos, and it hung down just below his knees. His condition began suddenly in 2008. Wesley described an accidental injury in his sleep, and by morning, his body had swollen overnight. Doctors tried to treat it with prolonged antibiotics and multiple specialist visits, but the swelling kept growing. Eventually, it left him unable to live a normal life. Simple tasks became battles. Walking required him to rest the weight on a milk crate as he moved. He wore an upside-down hoodie as makeshift pants just to get through each day. Wesley could not afford treatment on his own, so he turned to the media for help. He appeared on The Howard Stern Show and launched fundraising efforts, hoping the public would notice his story. That attention eventually reached Dr. Joel Gelman at the UC Irvine Center for Reconstructive Urology. Dr. Gelman agreed to perform the surgery completely free of charge. In April 2013, Wesley underwent a 13-hour operation. Surgeons removed the massive growth, and Wesley walked away almost 200 pounds lighter. He regained his mobility and finally found relief from years of physical and emotional pain. Dr. Gelman called it a true transformation, a rare success story built on human compassion. But Wesley's story did not end happily. On March 14, 2014, Wesley passed away in a Las Vegas hospital at age 50. He had suffered multiple heart attacks and dangerous infections, both worsened by complications from diabetes during a long hospital stay. Wesley's life was documented in The Man with the 10 Stone Testicles, which aired on Channel 4 in the UK and later on TLC in the US. The documentary struck viewers with its raw honesty, and it sparked conversations about healthcare access around the world.